So um, my talk today is called the KILIG Factor, how our KILIG can be our compass, cure, and most effective creative strategy. Now, why did I want to call it that? No, it's because during the course of if I'm gonna date myself, 49 years, my KILIG has come to me in like various ways, like in the most it showed up to me like this, like a gift, from the gods. So let me start out first with this quote, with this quote that has resonated with me for such a long time. Hang on. When you follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track that has been there all the while waiting for you. And the life that you ought to be living is the one you're living somehow. When you can see it, you begin to deal with people who are in the field of your bliss, and they open doors to you. I say, follow your bliss, and don't be afraid, and doors will open where you didn't know they were going to be. So follow your bliss, by Joseph Campbell. This is actually, I think, one of his, if not his most famous quote. And when I heard that before, when I was in my 20s, it made me do bold things. For instance, I quit my job in advertising. I was a copywriter in advertising. I was writing for a multinational company, and the brands were multinational. They were big, and it was a secure, fun job. But I felt the call. I felt the call to follow my bliss, because this wasn't my bliss. At the time, bliss for me was follow your dream, follow your passion. So, it was big. And at that time I said, I really want to make films. I realized that because the part that I really loved about advertising was when we were shooting the commercial. I was working with directors, I was working with cinematographers. We were on set, and I felt high on set. I said, oh my God, this is perfect. This for me this is my place. And so I left advertising, and I went on this hero's journey. Campbell calls it, where you are trying out new things, and then you are faced with challenges that you overcome and all of that. And so I felt that I was following my bliss, but it was hard. It's like, why does it have to be this hard? I spent 2 years trying to get into film school, because to my mind, the only way that I could ever become a filmmaker, a legit filmmaker, was if I studied at NYU, because my idols were from there. Martin Scorsese was there. That's where he taught. And M. Night Shyamalan was there. That's where he studied. And I thought, it's the only way to get a really good film that people all over the world are going to watch. I have to study in NYU. And so I did that for 2 years. I applied to the school, and, without much success. So it was many, many years of struggle, I would say, because truth be told, beside the quote, follow your bliss, the other quote that I really, really resonated with, and that I held as a motto also, was by the poet Rainer Maria Rilke, which was that something is difficult must be one more reason for us to do it. I kind of latched onto the word difficult, so the more that something now was difficult, and the more impossible it seemed, the more it felt noble to me and heroic. So if I wasn't struggling, if I wasn't climbing like the highest mountain, and it didn't even have to be like any mountain. No, it had to be Everest. It had to be Everest levels. If I wasn't doing that, I didn't feel like I was living my full potential. My full potential had to have hardship, had to have difficulty, had to have dream the impossible dream. So I liked it when I was like battered and bruised. It's like, yeah, this is my proof that I tried for something really great. So that was how I was for many, many years. And then afterwards, something happened in 2019 where I was like bloodied and bruised. And I was like, I'm so tired of this, guys. Can I do something else? Can I do like, can I have another modus operandi? And then a friend of mine who was a healer, she said, you know that you wanted this, right? You know that it's hard for you because you wanted it to be hard. And that opened up my mind. I was like, are you joking me? Why would I even want this? She said, because there's something about it, you know, it's like we watch it in our movies, we watch it in our films, you know, when you climb Everest, when you overcome all these seemingly impossible obstacles, you're a hero. That's what it is, you know, you wanted to feel the effort, you wanted to feel that. And I said, I'm done. Is there another way of like making my dreams come true without being bloodied and bruised, without having to jump off the cliff every single time? She said, yeah, you can allow for things to be easy. So for me, that was like, really, I can allow for things to be easy. And when she told me that, something in me kind of clicked. And I looked back at the times where things happened for me and they were easy and they happened in an almost magical way. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to start with my kilig. Okay. The kilig word, Filipino word that means exhilaration or elation caused by an exciting or romantic experience, an instance of this, a thrill. And I was like, okay, it came back to me what Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss. I felt the ease of the word bliss. I felt it. I was like, felt it for the first time. I was like, oh yeah, maybe there's something there. Maybe I kind of like read it wrong. Maybe it could be easy. Maybe it doesn't have to be so difficult and impossible. So I said, okay, there's that word. It's called kilig. It's Filipino for kilig. I'm like, I latched onto it. I said, sige. When was it that, you know, I did something out of kilig and things flowed for me? And okay, there are many stories, but I will tell this one particular story. It was 2016, a dark year for many around the world. Trump was still president. I mean, Trump had been elected president. We had a new president, and it was dark. You know, there was like so much darkness in the world. And 2017, March, I think March, after Women's Month, a friend and I held a Stig Girl Talk where we gathered together and we tried to share experiences of uplifting one another. And at around the same time, I was applying for a job at a progressive school. I thought, okay, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna work with. I had found a school that I really loved, and it was in Santa Rosa. Okay, this is like an hour away from where I live, and they were interested in me as a teacher, but they wanted to know what age level I wanted to teach at. They said, oh, there's this, there is 4 years old to 7 years old, there's this to this age, and then there's the teenagers. What age group do you want to teach? I couldn't decide. So they said, why don't you sit in one of the in these classes so that you can decide, you can tell what sort of class you want to teach in, you know, I mean, what your students, what age group you want to teach. So I said, okay, I'll do that. So I would go to Santa Rosa, sit with the kids, watch the teacher teach them, marvel at the place because it was beautiful. It was around nature. I loved it. I loved the methodology. I loved it was the values that they espoused were very aligned with mine. You know, one of the questions in their application was, what is a human being? Like, oh, what is a human being? So I loved it. So I would go back. I think my application took around 4 days in all. But every time I drove back from Santa Rosa, on the drive back, I would fall asleep. So I borrowed my mom's driver. So at the back of the car, I would fall asleep. And then when I get home, I would crash in bed and be asleep for like 3 straight hours. And I didn't understand why I was so tired. I was so tired after every trip from the school. So finally, there came the day where I was supposed to tell them already my decision. And the day before that, I was on my way home. I was on my way home. The next day, I was going to give them my decision, like what age level I wanted to teach at, and the terms, everything. As I was going home, I was like, oh my, am I really going to teach in that school? Am I going to move to Santa Rosa? Can I do this? There was this agitation in my head, there was agitated thoughts. And I was like, I don't want to move to Santa Rosa. I don't want to live there. What am I going to do there? Like after class, I mean, where would I go? There was this chatter of anxiety, and I felt the, myself being anxious. And I wondered, why am I anxious? I wanted to work in the school. I applied. I was the one who approached them. I was the one who sent my resume and said I wanted to work with them. And I should be grateful that they were interested in me. I'd never thought like in a school. I was always just, a writing coach, and I had created my own courses, but they were willing to do this, to give me this chance. And I wasn't even schooled in their methodology. So I said, I should be grateful. Why am I not excited? The word was dread. Why was I dreading this job? So I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath and I said, okay, self, if you don't want to move to Santa Rosa, where do you want to move? And then, quick as a flash, the answer came, Siargao! And I'm like, oh my, what? Where did this voice come from? Okay, so Siargao. So, okay, backtrack a bit. Okay, we're in March, right? When this is happening, it's around March 2017. 5 months prior to that, I was in Siargao. I visited my sister who had moved there. She had a shop. She had her dogs. She was having the time of her life. She had, married the man of her dreams. So it was, and I said, okay, I went to visit her. And then while I was there on my last day of that trip, she and her husband brought me to this yoga resort, treated me to lunch at a vegan restaurant in this yoga resort. And when I stepped in, I was like, oh my God, this place is so beautiful. I fell in love with that yoga resort. At that time, I was fully vegan, so it was heaven to me. For me, I had stepped into, oh my God, this is it. This is where I want to be. So they introduced me to the owner. I got her number, and we were communicating all of this time because she was helping me to develop a self-made yoga retreat. It was still new, so they didn't have any of that yet, but I wanted to go there and do a yoga retreat for at least a month. So anyway, that was happening. So when I was in the car on my way from Santa Rosa, I was like, oh my God, wait a minute. I remembered that she was looking for a GM. She was looking for a general manager to run the yoga retreat. But it did not occur to me, of course, before to apply, because why would I? I'm a writer. I don't have a background in the hospitality industry. I don't have a background in the service industry, nothing. I'd never worked in a hotel. I'd never worked in a restaurant. So I said, but I was too excited, to think rationally, to think, logically, whatever. I said, oh my God, I couldn't wait to go home. I went home. As soon as I got home, I emailed her. I said, hey, basically, I said, hi, I heard that you're looking for a general manager. Here's my CV. And if you find something there that tells you I might be able to do the job, let me know. Guys, it did not take an hour for her to get back to me. Within that hour of my writing her, we were on the phone. And we were so excited. We were both like, oh, okay, oh my God, when are you coming? When can you come? Oh. We were so excited. She said, okay, I just need to create it was a family corporation. So she said, I'm going to have to talk to my dad, and my mom and some of these details. But basically, we're doing this. And so that's how it happened that I moved to Siargao, ran a vegan restaurant without any prior experience except that I love vegan food. And I ran this yoga resort. So it was amazing that I got exactly what I wanted at that time, which was I had a job, I had a regular job in a beautiful setting. It was an island paradise. And I had my yoga retreat. I was doing yoga for free because it was part of the employee benefits. And I was eating vegan food for free for 5 months. So I was doing that for 5 months until my kilig called me back to Manila and to write the script, to write this full-length script that turned out to be, a bear. Asosasyon ng mga babaeng eskapo sa realidad, or the Society of Women Escaping Reality. But actually, the English title, I changed it to Angry Bitches Escaping Reality. I think that's more in line, with that. So it's still a bear. Angry Bitches Escaping Reality. And and this is the poster on the right side, if you can see it. It says, don't anybody freaking disturb their peace. So it's about these women who have found out that the most valuable thing that they have is their peace of mind, and they are going to protect it at all costs. So this is my sister and I, Joff. On the left side of the screen is my first day when I landed, right after I landed, in Siargao, and I went straight to her shop. I'm like, oh my God. And we're so excited and kilig. We're like, oh my God, we're going to be living here together. So this is an example of your kilig as your compass. This was a stark example for me of what can happen when I follow the excitement in me, rather than my history, because if I would just go by my history, which is like, I'm a writer, I did this, these are my skills, this is what I studied in college, this is what I'm good at, blah, blah, I wouldn't allow myself to have this experience. If I had only looked at, if I had only listened to the opinion of my rational side, my left brain, and did not consult my other self, which was, my inner self, which was my intuition, I wouldn't have had this, because this idea came from my inner self. This idea came from my soul, really, So because of that, I felt like, oh my God, okay, when I listen to my kilig, when I pay attention to it, when I look at it as valid, it's really going to point me in the direction of, of my fun, of new things, of learning, of new adventures. And really, so because of that, I had this screenplay. And 2 years later, I had a book launch because a friend also had this idea of publishing. And she said, why don't you publish it? Why don't you publish it into a book? And so I did. And it's there. And it's now also on Amazon. And in fact, strangely enough, that's also where I met, when I was in the yoga resort, that's where I met my lead actress. She actually walked into the resort, and we didn't make the connection at that time. But later on, maybe like a few months afterwards, she was like, yeah, you were there and you told me that I shouldn't be there because it's not a party place. But that's how we bonded. But that's how my lead actress and I bonded. So that is how your kilig can be your compass. Now, how your kilig can be your cure and your companion in the dark. So this is a story that I've told to some of my closest friends. And before the pandemic, actually exactly a week before the lockdown, before the Manila lockdown, I remember the day because I really wrote it down in my journal. It was March 7. And I think the lockdown, if I'm not mistaken, was March 17 or March 15 here. I mean the Manila lockdown. A week before that, an idea for a story, for a novel came to me. So it felt like, oh my God, again, I felt that familiar kilig. And I said, oh, thank you so much. I love this. I love this. I love this story. So I got a dedicated journal and I was writing down ideas. I was writing down the story, the title, the characters, and all of that. And so when the lockdown happened, a week after that, I was deep into the world of this story, of this novel, such that I did not have the reaction to the lockdown the way that a lot of people had. A lot of people were, of course, naturally panicked, worried. What about my job? What about, they were worried about jobs. They were worried about how they were, send their kids to school, how long the lockdown was going to take. But I had none of that, because additionally, on the day of the lockdown, on the day itself, someone offered me a job, a writing job, for a humanitarian organization that was addressing food security. So, so for me, it was like I already had a passion project, a personal passion project, which was feeding my soul, and I had a job. I had a paid job. Are you hearing this? Are you hearing my mom picking mangoes? So I think that's my mom picking mangoes outside. So outside my window, this is a mango tree right in front of the window. But anyway, so all of these things, I was like, oh my God, I felt so blessed. And at the same time, I also felt that I was even of service, in this really dark time. I was working for this amazing humanitarian organization. And so, like also a lot of people during the pandemic, I was taking care of a sick loved one, my dad. So my dad is one of my favorite people in the world, one of my favorite humans. And I'm the eldest child. I don't know if it has anything to do with my being, I wasn't really assigned to take care of him. I took it upon myself. I wanted to be there for him. So I was taking care of my dad. I was his head nurse. He was going through a lot. He had diabetes. He had liver cirrhosis. He had kidney disease. He had ulcers. So I watched his health deteriorate sharply. I was the one who accompanied him to the hospitals along with my other sister, and when he started dialysis. So all of these, if someone were looking at my life or our lives, it seemed super duper difficult. It was super difficult because I could see his frustration. He couldn't fly. He wanted to go home to Surigao, which was his happy place, which was our hometown. He couldn't do that. And I was watching him not being able to go to the neighborhood mall to sit and have his coffee and watch his movies. He had to be at home like most people, especially seniors. So watching him was really, really, it was super difficult. But because there was this parallel life happening, for me, this was what was fueling this other life. I could be there for my dad, for my mom, for my other sister, and updating my siblings wherever they were, in different parts of my sister. My other sister was in Cambodia, a brother, and my other sister in Siargao. I was updating them, planning my dad's meds, which were changing every 2 weeks. So, but at that time, I felt like, because I was writing this story and because it was exciting, I could be held, together. I knew that this wasn't the only life. I knew that the life that we were watching in the news, that was being reported to us, wasn't the only reality. You know, the reality of that physical world wasn't the only reality. There was this reality that was happening for me, and it was real and it was beautiful. It was the story that was unfolding, and I was watching it, going deeper into it, and I was like, wow, this is what it is. This is what all of the sages say. This is what Jesus said. Eternal life is here. Your joy is here. So I'm like, even as this thing is happening, you could actually still feel joy. And I was still feeling kilig, even as I was, lifting my dad and staying with him in the hospital, in the kidney center. And it, it could have been impossible, but I thought, wow, this is what it is. This is what it means. And so in 2021, this is my dad. He's reading Siddhartha. I'm so proud. He doesn't like to read a lot. He loves to watch movies. But after he watched Doctor Strange, he became interested in Buddhism. He became interested in um, other religions, the Eastern religions. And I said, why don't you start with Siddhartha Gautama? Because just like Jesus, he was a historical figure. He was like, really? My dad is so cute. Anyway, he's like this super Catholic who never stepped out of Catholicism. And so he read Siddhartha. And for me, I'm like super proud of that moment, that he was really interested in the life of Siddhartha Gautama. So that's him reading under the mango tree. And me being the paparazzi, I was taking a lot of pictures of my dad because I had a sense that we didn't have very much time. We didn't have very much time with him. And so I took all of these pictures. And in 2021, last year, February 14, Valentine's Day, my dad passed away. And when that happened, actually, we were all facing something for the first time, right? We were going to be living as a family without my dad for the first time in our lives. And of course, it broke us. But at the same time, something kicked in. That other life that I had been nurturing, that my Kilig had brought me to, and that Kilig had been nurturing me in, this parallel life, this life of the spirit, this life of my soul, caught me. And so, because I was no longer just seeing the physical life as the only reality, and I saw this life of the spirit as just as real and even more real. My dad, I saw that death was real. I saw that death happened in the physical plane, but I felt my dad's love never leave me. In fact, I felt even more deeply connected to my dad. That I would sometimes laugh because he seems so there. He seems even more present in my life now. And this is a picture of my dad jumping into the waters of Siargao. So this was when we were, I think this was I was in my 20s. We were there, the entire clan, because my dad is from there. And he was just the happiest person. That's what we loved about our dad. He was just the most joyful person ever. He just really, he followed his bliss. That's the thing with him. He just followed his bliss. He went where he wanted to go. So this is him jumping into the waters of Siargao. And this is how, if I could capture in a visual what he's like right now, what his presence is in my life right now, it's this. He's just joyful, leading me to the next fun thing, the next fun thing, and the next fun thing. And this is where I'm going to segue now into your kilig as the creative strategy. Because what my dad led me to, last year when my dad passed away, a month after that, my sisters, who are K-drama fanatics, two of them, my second sister and my youngest sister were K-drama fanatics. They said, hey, it's time for you to watch Crash Landing on You. Because I was so out of the loop. I did not watch anything. I felt that I couldn't focus on anything other than taking care of my dad and just and the story that I was writing. So they said, you have to watch Crash Landing on You. I'm like, oh my God, 16 episodes. I can't. No, you have to. So we did it as a bonding thing. So my sisters and I, we watched Crash Landing on You. It was beautiful. I loved it. But when I watched my second K-drama, Startup, that's when the magic happened. That's when I'm like, holy shit. I want this. This is how I want to write. I want to write a TV series. For the first time in my life as a writer, I realized, oh my God, this is what I want to write I wanted to write a TV series, and I want to write it like this. And then a few months later, somebody from Marvel called my sister, Tara, and said she wanted to have a meeting with us. She used to be a Marvel executive, and now she was an executive for View Philippines, which was the biggest streaming platform for K-dramas. So I'm like, what? Are you joking me? So we met with her, and things happened super fast. And I was just saying, I want to write a K-drama. And then suddenly my sister and I are writing a K-drama. And here's the thing. My sister Tara and I have never written together before. She has a very different way of writing. I have a very different style of writing. But we said, okay, let's try to do this. I think Dad wants us to work together. She said, yeah, I think so too. I think this is Dad. Okay. So we said, how are we going to resolve the things that are really like when we butt heads? How are we going to resolve this? We said, okay, let's bring that into the picture. Let's draw lots. So we'd get pieces of paper, we'd write the things down, and we'd go, okay, Dad, what do you think? What should be the age of our characters? Is it 40, 41, 44? Because I was adamant on certain things. She was adamant on certain things. So we would draw lots, and then we would agree, okay, Dad, whatever you want, that's what we're going to do. And so that's what we did. And when you're going to watch it, I'm saying when, because when you watch it, you will see our dad. You see our dad in the character, a particular character there. Some of the things that he says, we were quoting our dad verbatim. Some of the lines that he would say, we would put it there because it was so funny. And the magical thing was when they were casting it already, when we saw the first few shots, we saw that our dad's favorite comedian, Leo Martinez, was cast as our dad. We're like, oh my God, Dad! We're like, holy mackerel! So we're like, that's perfect. He was our dad's favorite. He would even quote, the character of Leo Martinez, which was the fictional character of Leo Martinez. His name was Manhik Manaog, Congressman Manhik Manaog. That was our dad's favorite character. And we're like, oh my God, grabe ka, Dad. So this is K-Love. Ching, 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 ching. So this is the K-drama that my sister and I wrote with our dad, with our dad's involvement, we felt. And the reason I think that I'm really sharing this right now, there's so many reasons, but I want to share it. I think this is the best way to explain it, or to this quote that a friend of mine shared with me. And then it happens. One day you wake up and you're in this place. You're in this place where everything feels right. Your heart is calm. Your soul is lit. Your thoughts are positive. Your vision is clear. Your faith is stronger than ever, and you're at peace with where you've been, at peace with what you've been through, and at peace with where you're headed. My wish for you, for everybody here, is that this is how you're gonna feel most of the time, because this is also how I feel. This is how I feel most of the time now, which is why I felt like I could share it at this point. So, and this is me. So that's me being super kilig, and that's my sister Joff in the foreground. This is us 10 years ago when in the Pont des Arts in Paris. We were so kilig because we are like, holy crap, we actually, this is the trip that we've been planning for. We've been planning for a bit, and the way we planned it was super fun, nothing stressful. We're like, how do you want your first Paris trip to be like? I want this. So we had a wish list, and we're like, oh my God, everything happened. Everything, like, even better than we imagined. So may all our lives be so much better than we imagined. And may we live in that parallel space, especially now where there's not a lot of good news, out there. And so that we don't believe that as the only reality. We are the creators of our reality. We are creating that life, the life that we are living. Those things outside, they're not creating us. We shouldn't allow those things outside to do that. So this is where I'm gonna end my talk, which lasted, wow, a long time. I thought I was gonna do 22 minutes. Thank you very much for being here, for listening. If you have questions, you can ask your questions now. I will stop sharing. Thank you so much thank you, Angela. Thank you so much for asking that. Yes, super practical tool. Okay. Is that this is what I've been doing for quite a while, no? When I wake up in the morning, I do not step out of my room. I do not step out of my room until I have meditated for at least 22 minutes. Okay. It doesn't have to be 22 minutes. It can be 5 minutes. It can be 15 minutes, whatever gets you to a space of when I say groundedness, because what you're actually trying to do is you're trying to trust your intuition more, right? You're trying to trust your soul more. You're trying to trust your inner being more, because this is the self, the higher self, that actually knows everything, that sees the bigger picture, right? The part of us that is afraid is the limited part, is the ego, right? The ego in us, the ones that we are, our personality and all of that. So it is naturally limited, it's naturally limited. So it will only look at the things and, oh my God. And if it doesn't see the things, if it doesn't perceive the things with its, its five senses, then it will say it's not real. That cannot happen, because the only thing that can happen is the things that have already happened, right? And so you want to bridge it. You want to go and trust that intuition more. So before you turn on your phone, before you talk to other people and hear their version of the world, hear their perspective, hear first the perspective of your soul. I don't step out. I don't go to the kitchen. I really protect my peace. I protect my peace, as much as I can. So that's one. I don't turn on my phone. I don't watch the news unless it's like super duper whatever, necessary. I don't even think it's really that necessary, because I subscribe to the Optimist Daily. They're all about solutions, right? Because if you vibrate to if you watch the news, you can tell that they're vibrating at the problem level. Here's the problem, problem. So if you are vibrating on that level, you're like, oh my God, problems, right? So you want to be in the frequency of solutions, okay? Solutions. So maybe take a break from the news. Take a break from the news. You really don't, I mean, they will tell you
Don't
anyway
want
when you're gonna hear it anyway from someone you're having breakfast with, right? But first, caretake that. It's all the basic stuff actually. It's like treat yourself like a plant, you know, drink your enough water, get your sunshine, walk in the mornings, get movement. But really, for me, it was meditation and journaling. Meditation, journaling, and being around people who live in that space already. And that's why I joined this group, with my sister. And that's why Jeff and I call ourselves PG. It's not patay gutom, although that is also it, but it's more of positive girl. We're the two like positive, so we call each other PG, positive girls, because you need reinforcement. You need reinforcement from people who trust in their intuition, who trust in their kilig, who are following their bliss, right? Who have seen the evidence. It's just really about collecting a lot of evidence, a lot of evidence for your practical mind. So that when your practical mind says, di naman yan pwede, that's not possible. Really? Oh, what about this? And what about this? And what about when this happened? And what about when this happened? Cannot argue, right? Cannot argue with evidence, right? So I have a lot of evidence in my life already. So I've racked up enough evidence to kind of shut up that voice in my head that says, really? Di mo naman kaya eh, di ba? I mean, I had never written a TV series in my life. I'd never written for TV in my life. And 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 I didn't even apply for this job. It came to me, you know what I mean? And I wouldn't even know the first thing about like writing for a TV series with Studio Dragon, which is my dream. I want to work with Studio Dragon, which is a South Korean company, that made Startup, which is my favorite Korean drama. So yeah. Was that helpful? I have more tips. We can talk later. So
Yes.
there you go. I really do not. I do not. I hide. When I see my mom, you did not see me. You did not see me in the morning. No. So until I'm like, okay, now I'm fully on. Now I'm full on human. There. Now I can talk to you. Yes. Because I had connected to my full self. So yeah. Yes. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.